Hi, and welcome to the Brohoyo podcast, the podcast about Gacha in general and Hoyoverse games in specific. I'm your host, Steven, and this is my co host, David.
Hey everyone.
And this week, we're going to cover some beginner mistakes that we see when people start Gacha gaming. Dave, this was a topic that you suggested, so why don't you jump right in with your what inspired you for this topic?
Yeah, so for today's topic, I wanted to kind of go over some beginner pitfalls that, maybe we made ourselves on this game, or maybe things that we've seen. And what really inspired me to do this was actually Genshin launched, and obviously they did a huge promotional push. And as part of that promotional push, they did a lot of sponsored streams with, streamers of varying sizes in various gaming audiences to try and capture a new player bases or get returning players to come back for it. And there was a particular streamer that I was watching, and he very obviously hadn't really played Genshin before. He hadn't played Genshin Impact at all, and wasn't really familiar, I think, with probably Gacha in general, it would be safe to say. And I could just tell that based off of how he was playing and things that he was doing, and is unfamiliar with kind of the combat or the way things interacted. But then he also did a few things that I was just, I was kind of sitting there going, "Ooh, like I wouldn't do that. Like that's not." And of course, his Twitch chat is trying to help him out to the best of their abilities. But when you have thousands of people talking at you and telling you to do certain things, it's not going to be a cohesive thought, right?
Yeah.
And then the other funny thing was I don't necessarily think Hoyoverse set him up for success in terms of the account that they gave him, because they basically gave him an account with a few level 50 characters, maybe with the best being Nuvolette. And these were characters that, again, were level 50, not max level. They were not well geared in terms of their artifacts. They had, I think, maybe 4-star weapons, okay, but they weren't fully maxed. Their talents weren't fully maxed. And put them into content where they're fighting level 80 characters. But that's that's a different topic. Like I said, what I wanted to focus on was the pitfalls that beginners make when they are starting out a gacha. And I guess, Steve, what I'll first pull from and maybe ask you here is, what, looking back when we started Genshin, or maybe even when we started Honkai Star Rail, what were some things that maybe you did that, looking back, you regret, or some things that you actively avoided because you or maybe more familiar with other gacha games, and you just took those lessons and applied it here?
So first of all, I regret nothing. I was perfect, absolutely perfect when I started Gacha. I made no mistakes, and I certainly do not have a dark history in other pre-Hoyoverse Gacha games that I'm not going to cover. But I would say that some mistakes that I have seen other people do, not me, other people, do are things like, maybe level every character up at the same time. Perhaps maybe overinvest in relics, especially low level ones. Like over invest into them instead of just kind of using them as low level stat sticks. There's a couple other things on the list, but no, I'm perfect.
All right, well, I'll try and crack that code and see if we can delve into your past that you're clearly suppressing, or not. But you mentioned two things that I do kind of want to touch on, and that would be the leveling a variety of different characters, and then also leveling low level artifacts, and I guess not low level artifacts per se, but low rarity artifacts would probably be maybe the better term to use. So yeah, in terms of the characters themselves, what I would say on that is, sometimes when we jump into Gotcha, we're excited to, to try it out, and we want to just push our team levels. And so we use a lot of those new player resources just to kind of level up those initial characters that we get. And a lot of times that's maybe not the most efficient thing to do, because maybe for meta purposes, right, the freebie characters that we're getting aren't going to be maintained in your team. They're like the tutorial characters, right? And then once we actually unlock the gacha portion of the game, we spend whatever free currency is on those may end up being the characters that we end up building around. So in terms of of synergies with
Mhm.
those characters. Yeah, we don't want to burn resources leveling characters that we're ultimately not going to be using once we actually fill our roster even a little bit.
Yeah, and on that, I think a good rule of thumb is that when you're playing through, if you're not hitting a wall at any given point with your characters, maybe hold off on investing into them. You don't need to hyper level the first few characters that you get. If you're able to clear content, it's only really when you hit those walls that it's time to maybe stop and reassess. Just for proactive advice, if I was talking to somebody who was new, I don't know why necessarily a new person might be listening to our podcast, but if you are, this would be a piece of advice I would give you or other new players. Would be, you don't need to. This isn't a JRPG or a solo RPG where you need to like hyper level and then kind of blow through it. Those resources are time gated, so you want to husband just to build off of.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. That is something that is not in the typical RPG experience, like you mentioned, but in a Gacha experience because things are time gated. Yeah, we want to save those resources so until you actually do hit a wall, because then once you hit that wall, you maybe have a better understanding of game mechanics, you have a better understanding of characters and their synergies, and you have a better idea of maybe what type of play style you want to go through. To use even another Gacha game as an example, to use Nikkei as an example, they give passive idle, leveling materials over time, and you get more in a period of time the higher level or the more stages you've cleared, essentially. So if I've cleared, for every 5 stages that I've cleared, it kind of levels up the amount of resources I get. And so if you were to use the 3 hours of free resources before you've cleared stages because you just want to boom, bang off and hyper level, your characters you have immediately, you're going to lose out on those resources if you wait until you hit that wall to then use just the resources you need to get over the wall, right? And so that's kind of using that example, what to expand on what Steve you were saying there.
Yeah.
Now,
Oh, sorry.
now as far as the next point, right, talking about artifacts, leveling low rarity artifacts. So with low rarity artifacts, I mean, if we're going to look at, let's say, Genshin as an example here, right? We have you start off with your gray artifacts, then you have green, blue, purple, and then orange being your 5-star artifacts. And looking at the main stats and the substats, right? There aren't too many substats on those lower level geared stuff or lower rarity geared stuffs, and they're going to be replaced pretty often as you find higher rarity ones and better ones. And then in other gotchas, even you have the level of the artifacts to worry about themselves, because Genshin's different in that you can level any artifact up, plus incrementals, but they're all accessible at quote unquote level 1. Like a level 1 character can equip a 5-star artifact, right? But there are gotchas out there where gear is going to be walled behind what level is your character, and those higher level artifacts are going to have better substats, and so you don't necessarily want to power level those artifacts at a lower level when you don't need to, and they're going to be replaced pretty quickly. It's kind of like the theory in Diablo, right? You're switching out gear so quickly as you level up, there's no point in enhancing or leveling up the gear because it's just going to be replaced on the next dungeon that you run, type thing.
Yeah.
But what are maybe some of your thoughts on artifact tips?
So I would push back a little bit on that. And
Okay.
the big caveat that I would put here is this is all, of course, game dependent, but I do think there is some value in leveling up sets of gear on whatever your main progression team is as you move forward through content. You don't, when I say that, I don't mean don't go and raid for relics or artifacts or gear, immediately. Don't burn your daily resources on that. Only use the pool that you're given. But this is also not advice to say, hey, keep everything at like level 1 minimum, just try and scrape by. Like there is a balance between enjoyment and moving forward, because the truth of the matter is that for most of us, when we first start out a gacha, you are not going to get max level in game in a day.
Right.
So don't. I guess the point is, don't try and push it. Like, don't try and level that particular slot for your character. Don't overinvest in it, but use the resources that you do get to at least stay par with where you're supposed to be. Again, I say this in part because when I was doing the Honkai Star Rail playthrough a while back, I was basically locked to only 4-star relics, and I was, when I first played through it for my own personal account, I didn't really notice that I had major issues with relics because I was moving at pace. It wasn't as much of an issue because for the show it was much more breakneck. I really didn't have the opportunity to slow down and move at the pace that a average player would. I did notice that running on low relics, no relics, that really made certain fights that should have been very winnable much more of a slog, much more of an issue. So the pushback I would give is, the point of this is not to make you go, oh, I can't use anything. Like, it's not to make you afraid of using stuff or leveling up gear or so on and so forth. Just don't spend a week grinding for all of this 4-star, purple, whatever this lower level gear is that you're going to eventually replace. But do try and stay kind of in line with where the game kind of wants you to be. And I know that that's a hard line to cross, especially if you're, or a hard line to walk, especially if you are a new player and you don't really know. Obviously, a lot of what we're going to talk about can be solved by just researching stuff, but you're coming here, so here's some of your research.
And I think that's a fair point, because even with Genshin and Star Rail, I think one of the big hint tips for beginning players that was stressed was, like you mentioned, don't grind domains for artifacts and waste your resin and waste your fuel in Star Rail on artifact dungeons before you hit Traveler level or Star Blazer or Trailblazer level 45, because it was at 45 is when you could have the chance of getting those 5-star artifacts. So basically play with what the game has given you, and then level up artifacts as needed, like you said, so you're not banging your head against a wall. But as far as like then grinding for those artifacts and doing those domains, that I remember being stressed to me was, hey, don't worry about doing this until you're level 45, because at level 45, I think that's when you unlock the world tier that finally enabled you to get those highest tier artifacts.
Yeah.
Was that something that was maybe stressed to you, or is that something not so much?
Yeah, because when I played Genshin, you were the one that I guess peek behind the curtain.
I remember beat your head over it, or
yeah.
not,
Dave was very specific when I first started Genshin. Don't grind artifacts. What I would say is a lot of modern gacha have gotten very good at, almost too good, I would say, at onboarding people. I think there's a little bit too much hand holding, but at least as far as some of those systems goes, a lot of times what they'll do is they'll add achievements, or I think it's the Adventurer's Handbook in Genshin, other little systems to help onboard you and let you know kind of what the progression is going to be. Typically it'll be things like, hey, you need to have 4 characters level. You have to have 1 character leveled to level 10, and then you need to have 4 characters leveled to level 10. Okay, all of these characters need to be equipped with this type of gear. Okay, now they all need to be equipped with the higher tier. Okay, now they need to be equipped with the higher tier, and they all need to be max level. Stuff like that to help guide the player in sort of hitting those goals and not running into walls. So I would say if the game has that sort of function, those can be good barometers for sort of where you're supposed to be. And if something isn't possible to do because you haven't gone far enough in the story or whatever, then you don't have to worry about it. It shouldn't be an issue. But yes, a lot of time, like when I was going through, this was pre some of those systems in Genshin, or at least I don't remember them quite as well. Yes, Dave, you were very much so banging on the drum of don't do artifact domains until level 45.
Yeah, I think
eventually level 40.
Yeah, because that was something I think that I spent some time doing some artifacts at a lower level because I didn't really have as big of a gap. Once I heard that, I was like, yeah, that really makes sense. And I should be looking at this as, and this is kind of my philosophy now, right, is artifact runs are not guaranteed to be an upgrade. So the first thing I typically focus on are the weapon materials and the talent materials, because running those domains and using your resin and your fuel in that regard is guaranteed to get you the upgrades, whereas the artifact domain is not, because it's you got a 50-50 chance of is it even going to be the right set, and then is it the right piece with the right main stat and then the right substats, right? There's all those factors that go into is this going to be an upgrade in terms of a piece of gear. But if you run a talent domain, you're going to get the talent books needed for your Genshin character, right? If you run the weapon ascension materials domain, you're going to get the material needed to ascend the weapons, and same thing with character ascension materials. So I usually prioritize those first in terms of leveling because they're guaranteed upgrades, whereas artifacts are a little bit RNG, right? It's we heard you liked Gacha, so we threw some Gacha into your Gacha.
Yeah, so you Gacha while you Gacha. I do think that's a good point, is that you want to aim for guarantees instead of anything that's more chance based. I would also say, depending on the game, and again, this is one of those where you'd have to do research. Depending on the game, you might also want to look into what are the largest power chunks of your character. Are talents going to be the thing that make or break what your damage as a character, or is it weapons that do it? In that case, maybe it is worth it to, even if they are lower level than what you prefer, at least get a handful of good weapons before proceeding. Look at how characters' power budgets are set up so that you can prioritize based off of what's going to give you the biggest benefit, especially early. But yes, in general, I would say guarantees over anything that's more randomized. Because trust me, you'll have plenty of time to do that randomized stuff.
Yeah, for sure, yes. And then another thing I wanted to kind of talk about too, and this may seem obvious, but I think it's worth being said, is kind of learn the mechanics of the game if there's any little intricacies maybe that could put you at a disadvantage. And what I mean by that, it could be twofold, right? One is, let's say you're fighting a boss that has like immunities to things, and then you need to bring like a specific type of character to do something, like if it only takes damage from X type, of element or whatever it is. Or the other thing would be if the game, because there are some gacha games that do this to kind of slow down or limit how fast players progress. And we can argue the merits of that. It's a different discussion, but the point being is that it does exist, in that this mechanic they'll throw in there will be is if the recommended power level of your team, if it's higher than the actual power level of your team, it may disadvantage your side, right? Different games have got this. Nikke had a brutal version of this at launch. Players complained and they've lessened it, but it still does exist. Gigan Irithil, however you want to pronounce that is somehow still not end of service yet. They have this, and there's other gacha games out there, but those are two examples where, again, if the level's recommended power, let's say, is 1,000, and your team power level is 750, it gives you more. It actually reduces your stats, so you're not doing 100% of the damage you normally would. And Nikke used to be real bad in that it was there were thresholds. Like if you were 25% below the recommended power level, it reduced the damage output, your HP, and your defense by a significant portion. Let's just say 25%. And it was bracketed. So even if you were literally like 1 point under the power threshold, it reduced it by whatever that bracket was, as if you were even like a point closer to like the next bracket, right? They've since changed it, so it's more on a curve, right? So if I'm 1 point under, that's not going to be the same as if I'm 100 points under. It'll be less of a penalty. So like learning little things like that so that you're not banging your head against the wall, I think is also important, because while there may be some games that you can overcome and are very skillful, especially like action RPG types, if they have that mechanic in there, it's only going to make it tougher, which some people like that, those Dark Souls types players. But for those that are a little bit more casual or like to, actually enjoy their gaming, that's not something we necessarily want to face, right? Just knowing things like that is helpful.
Yeah. I would also say knowing the resources that you're going to, because that's one of the things that always throws me about a new gacha game, is a lot of the way resources have work has become more and more standardized. I think in part because of Genshin Impact's success and you're seeing that style system get spread quite a bit more. Not that other games didn't use it before, but I think that's become a bit of a standard in order to try and eat some of that market. But knowing what's going to be required. A big one for me when I started Genshin was I didn't realize how important talents were. That talents functionally were more important than levels, just because leveling up didn't actually do much of anything. It gave you some low basic stat, bonuses, but my damage was garbage. All my abilities were garbage because of the fact that I didn't bother to level up any talents, and so they were doing 10% of my base stats instead of what they should have been doing, which was 50, 60 or more. So knowing things like that, hey, do talents matter? Do duplicates matter? Is this a game where the only way to level up skills is getting duplicates of a character? Stuff like that. And the duplicate thing is probably more under the pool economy, which we'll get to in a bit. But those sort of systems are also important to understand. How do you actually increase your team level, your team power in a meaningful way?
Yeah, and you touched on kind of the pull economy as well, so that's kind of a good segue into another mistake that I've seen. I've not in my Hoyoverse games, but in some other games, I've made this mistake in that I go and I spend a lot of that initial premium currency on the standard banners, and while in some cases that may be okay, and you're still feeling out the game, and so you're just like, what's the harm in this? For those games that you're going to be playing for a while, typically those standard banner characters are ones that you will ultimately accrue over time, and it's the limited banners are going to be what you ultimately want to save and pull for. Now, the caveat here, right, and Steve, you kind of touched on it, is how much do duplicates affect your power level? Because there is an argument to be made that it's at the launch of a game when you're first pulling on those banners, the pool is the least diluted it's ever going to be. So your chance of getting duplicates of characters is the best it's ever going to be, right? But this would only really be that caveat for the new launches of a game. If you're a new player, but the game itself isn't new, that's not necessarily going to be applicable, but hopefully there's a catch-up mechanic for you. But that's what I would say about pull economy, is being wise with your resources when you're starting out and not blowing a 10 pull of premium currency on a standard banner as soon as you get it.
Agreed. You definitely... I guess, again, another caveat. I'm the king of caveats today. But a caveat I would put in here is that if you make any of these mistakes, it also doesn't mean you need to completely re-roll the account. It's okay. If you burn a 10 pull of premium currency on a standard banner, the account isn't bricked. You don't need to just throw up your hands and start over. If you've done this in the past, we all have done it. Everyone who's played Gacha has done this stuff.
But you were perfect, Steve, so not you.
You are correct. I was perfect. I made no mistakes, so I'm above this particular one. So everyone but me has made these mistakes, and it happens to other people. But yeah, you want to husband your resources. It can. The nice part, I will say, is that again, a lot of modern gachas, because they have those limited banners that give you increased rates and so on, you can at least get a feel for the pool system fairly quickly, usually without having to burn premium currency. And if you do end up burning premium currency on those limited newbie banners, you're at least not doing as much damage. So there is that, but agreed. In general, you want to save whatever your rarest currency is going to be for the most valuable thing you can get for it.
Yeah, and to your point, by no means am I saying if you do any of these things, it's game over, the account's ruined, right? It's nothing like that. Again, these are just general guideline tips, things to think about, that maybe if you're transitioning from, being your couch gamer or your PC gamer, and you're coming over to this mobile gaming world, these are just kind of some things that we've picked up and had to adjust to, which is kind of how that new market is set up. And along those lines, the other thing with gacha games too that I think I find some new players that are more traditional gamers maybe have trouble adjusting with is not having like access to the entire roster of characters and not having access to the entire, weapon pool, and just coming to terms with that and just understanding gacha for what it is and realizing, hey, these games aren't meant to be sprints. They're meant to be marathons played over a long period of time until they ultimately end of service, right? That's the fact of the matter. All these games are going to eventually end of service. No matter how big they are, they will eventually go. And so you just kind of want to do what you would like to do with them and get, whatever enjoyment out of them that you came for, over that period of time. So, uh, players that are approaching a traditional gaming mindset and don't have that approach to it, because I'll see topics and people maybe ask on Reddit or something like, how do you deal with missing out on a character? Or how do you deal with, not having enough currency to pull on a banner when you see, your friends getting these characters? It's like you're just gonna have to come to terms with, if you're not shelling out real money, if you're not going to be a whale, you are going to miss out on some of the characters. But that's why it's important to kind of plan out a roadmap, with what the developers give you is coming down the road with character banners, with weapon banners and things like that. So you can kind of see what you can budget out for with that premium currency to make the most efficient use pulls, rather than saying, I'm going to pull for every character, so I'm going to get every character, because there's not necessarily a synergy there. Or you don't have for Hoyoverse games, like you don't have the primo budget to do that. There may be other games where they are a bit more on the collection side, and it's possible. But I would say for the most part, be prepared to like miss out on some characters on their first go around, and budget out a plan accordingly based off of the game's roadmap and what characters are coming, so that you have a play style you enjoy playing as with characters you enjoy, so that you can continue to ultimately enjoy the combat or the main gameplay loop.
Exactly. And one of the nice parts about gacha is they do want you to pull for characters. So if you do miss a character, if there's one character that for whatever reason you didn't like them when they first came out, or you didn't realize that they were going to be as meta, or the meta didn't realize that they were going to be as meta as they actually were, for whatever reason that you might want a character, reroll banners do come. You do have to balance reroll banners against new shiny stuff as well, but missing a character isn't the end of the world. They will come back eventually in most cases. Again, we have a collab episode if you want to see our feelings on characters who don't eventually come back. So that tends to be the reason why. But yeah, there's that. I would also say that when you're going in, as Dave mentioned, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. You're one of the ways that gacha games get money out of you is they try and encourage you to go, okay, well, give us money in order to sprint ahead, or get that dopamine hit. And you do have to have a certain amount of self-control if your plan is not to spend money, or you don't have the money to spend, to stop yourself and go, no, this can wait till tomorrow. You don't need to refill. I think it's 5 times a day is what you can do it in Genshin. I don't know, I've never using primos. You don't have to spend that 280 primos or whatever in order to complete that boss today, so that you can get the materials that you need in order to level the character to max today. That's something that can wait till tomorrow. Is it really going to kill you to wait that long? And you now know for the future, if you do want to do that, to pre-farm. Pre-farming is a thing. But things like that. I'm rambling, so I have to apologize. I'll let you
Well, you bring up a good point
Yeah.
too, and with roadmaps and a lot of these gacha games, they want you to ultimately pull you out for the new shiny thing and the new shiny character. And in doing so, they'll release teaser trailers. Like Hoyoverse especially is great at this, and their character drip marketing that they put out is fantastic. Like I think saw some today for some upcoming Star Rail characters, which we may touch on here in the future, but. With knowing that roadmap and knowing when those are coming and down the road, like Steve mentioned, you can you better utilize, your resin and your fuel by pre-farming the character ascension materials, pre-farming the talent materials, assuming those domains don't come in the same patch that they do, right? So those are things that you can kind of do, but again, it's to touch on the main point here is you want to have the right kind of mental approach to it, that it's not your traditional RPG game where you're gonna get every character right off the rip, and you really want to kind of budge out accordingly. Now, the other thing too about maybe missing out on the initial run of a character is you actually get a chance for the number crunchers and stuff to get some theory crafting going, actually see how it is in practice and what the final numbers are on launch. Because sometimes in beta or in, if you follow leaks and stuff, which we have an episode talking about leaks as well, and the benefit of them, but also have they gone too far. But with these theory crafters and these leaks, to the point, it's not the final numbers, right? So the final numbers we don't actually know until the character is released. And then if you miss it on the first go round, maybe a character doesn't play exactly how you thought it was going to, or it doesn't mesh as well as you thought it would with your current team. And so, you're like, oh, okay, by not being impulsive and by not trying to get every character, I'm actually kind of dodging a bullet, as it were, and I'm able to save up for a character that maybe better fits my play style and what I enjoy, or better fits my team's synergy.
Yeah. Another thing that I would bring up is, as a new player, have fun with it. Again, you don't necessarily need to stress about having a perfect run. Again, I've already brought this up before, but if you're enjoying grinding for artifacts and getting your 4-star SR whatever artifacts, and that's something that you're having fun with, go ahead, man. Or manette, dudette, whatever. Have fun with it. Like, you're going to be, ideally, if you are playing a gacha game and it's going to be your gacha game, you're going to be playing it for a year, 2 years, 3 years until end of service. So, you don't have to stress it too much. Like, don't get too worried about any of this. Watch the cutscenes. Don't do what I do and hit skip on story mode in certain games. Enjoy it. Like, you only get to play a gacha game for the first time once. And it's an experience that I wish that I could go back to a certain degree. Like, there's a certain amount of exploration and confusion and just enjoyment that I had starting up with Fantasyka and starting back in with the Genshin that you don't always necessarily get. So, have fun with it.
But please, for the love of God, don't level up a 1-star weapon when you have a 3-star weapon or a 4-star weapon in your inventory. And even more so, don't use those 3 or 4-star weapons to level up a 1-star weapon. Just, again, some of these, that's what I see in these sponsored streams, and it makes it unwatchable for me. It hurts.
You know what? I know that this is a bit of a bunny trail, but I completely understand. I get the same way when I watch some people play Elden Ring. There's a specific Elden Ring playthrough that I cannot watch not because the player was doing his own thing. He wanted to do a fist build where he just used fist weapons, and that's perfectly fine. That's completely legitimate. It was the fact that he refused to optimize at all. He made it so much more difficult for himself than he needed to at multiple points. It was very frustrating. So I 100% understand.
It's funny, because you got me off on this bunny trail now, but I've seen 3 different streamers from completely different, they are known for streaming different games, not gacha games. And I've seen 3 different streamers play Genshin, and all 3 of them have had very little, like, it's clear why they're doing the stream, and I'm not knocking them for getting the bag. Like, get your money, get paid, that's fine. But A, do a little bit of research, know what you're getting into, and B, you would think Hoyoverse would set up the account to be a little bit more successful, because it's hard to show off new content when they can't do the new content because they're not leveled enough.
Yeah.
But they had I won't share the streamers that I was following and watching do this, but I'll share the games that they were known for playing. One streamer was known for playing Teamfight Tactics. Another streamer that I've seen try Genshin was known for playing Apex Legends. and the last streamer I think was um, maybe like a variety streamer, but more well known for actual League of Legends, and MOBA type games. So, you know, for those gamers, it was interesting, especially like the Apex players and like the MOBA type players. Like, you have reactions, you play quick response twitchy games. Us, the team fight tactics players, we're not known for being as twitchy. It's more of a thinking game, not a reacting game. And so to see them also struggle with an action RPG was surprising in and of itself. But then when you toss in, they had no idea of the fundamental basics of elemental reactions and team switching. I'm watching a level 10 Lumine try and beat a level 30 boss, and those other three characters are just eating popcorn because they're not being rotated to.
Yeah. Oh, and again, I think at the root of a lot of this is when you are going to start playing, whether you're a streamer doing it for the bag or if you're just, starting out, there are tons of resources out there on everything that we just talked about. Trust me, there are channels out there for most of the major gacha games who will sit there and go, okay, look, here's how the pool system works. Here's how, this system works, and so on and so forth. And I understand that it can get esoteric at times. Trying to explain the pool system in any gacha to someone who does not have any understanding of gachas is confusing as hell. Like, I have gotten blank face stares from people who are very intelligent, who just cannot wrap their head around all of the intricacies of it, and it's not really that complex of a system. But until you've used it a few times, it's difficult for people to gronk on.
Yeah, and maybe maybe you guys want to come see our community over in Discord and have questions over there. We're more than happy to help out. In those regards, like I said, we've been playing enough gacha that I think we have a pretty decent grasp on stuff. And we come from a generation where couch co-op was a thing, and Super Nintendos and Nintendo 64. So we're just trying to get by in this mobile gaming world, right? And I think we got a pretty decent grasp on it.
We're getting better. We're not quite as big a dinosaurs as we used to be.
That is true, though. I do feel older and older when I see games like Halo 2 in the good old days talk about being rebooted and stuff like that. I'm just like, oh man, that doesn't seem that long ago.
Look, man, they rebooted Horizon Zero Dawn, and that was how recent?
Did they? I missed that one, but okay.
I think so, if I remember correctly. It's one of them.
But yeah, so those are kind of just some basic beginner mistakes we see, that hopefully you can avoid and not, get caught so much up on. Maybe you guys have made some other mistakes, you're like me and not like Steve, who's perfect. Give us a shout. Let us know in the comments down below. Maybe some things that you guys did that you would like to impart on us. Just let us know, if it was in a Hoyoverse game, let us know which one, or if it wasn't, hey man, let us know what that game was. Maybe we tried it out and made similar pitfalls as well. But I know we have a lot of other things to get to with a new character launch, and then we have a lot of news outside of Hoyoverse, a lot of announcements this week that I want to touch on. So let's jump into our character review and events next. So looking at Genshin this week, we did have Xilonen drop as a new Geo character coming to us from the region of Natlan. And she is a sword user, and our first Geo 5-star support that's come out since Zhongli came out however long ago back during Liu's story arc. Now obviously we have had 5-star Geo characters come out since then with Chiori, but being the Geo support, interested to see how she meshed with team synergies. And for those that are worried about her Geo and not synergizing with folks, have no fears. She is a great fit for a lot of teams. So I do just want to break down very quickly kind of her build and how you kind of want to maybe angle that. I'm not going to get too much into her kit, but just note that she scales with defense, which is, that's different for than a lot of the characters out there. So it's nice to know that those defense main stats aren't, disappointments anymore when you do those artifact grinds. But as far as the way to build her, there's a couple ways to build her that I've seen. So you have your Geo Shredder support, where she's basically going to be that support character, comes on, does her abilities, shreds the defense, and then swaps off the field. And obviously, her best weapon is her signature weapon. But if you are a free-to-play player, or you maybe just do the battle pass, you have a couple options available to you with her other weapon options, with the Flute of Epitzel, Cinnabar Spindle, and the Favonius Sword. Her best artifact is going to be this Scroll of the Hero of Cinder City, which I believe is one of the newer artifact sets that just came out. The bonus on that one, the 2-piece, when a nearby party member triggers a Night Soul Burst, the equipping character regenerates 6 elemental energy. And the 4-piece set, after the equipping character, so Xilonen in this case, triggers a reaction, all nearby party members gain 12% elemental damage bonus for their involved types for 15 seconds. If the equipping character is in the Night Soul Blessing state when triggering this effect, all party members gain an additional 28% elemental damage bonus for the elemental types involved in the reaction for 20 seconds. So with her being an Atlan character and taking advantage of the Night Soul's Blessing state with her E, essentially what her combo looks like when she's on the field is you come out, you attack, you use your skill, attack twice, and then flip her off the field to the next character. Or if you have your ult, you ult and then flip her off the field for your next character, and then that next character goes to town. But what you're going to look for as far as main stats for the Sands, you're going to look at energy recharge or defense percentage, goblet, defense percentage, circlet, defense percentage, or healing bonus. Because yes, not only does she shred defense, but she also heals. And then for your substats, you're going to be looking at defense percentage, energy recharge, crit damage, crit rate, recommended energy recharge anywhere in the 1 to 200% range. For a couple sample teams in this particular build, you have your hyper carry build, where it's her, Nuvillette, Farina, and our boy Kazuha. Or there is a build, she kind of fits into the Navia team pretty perfectly, and I'm kind of excited to try and pull for him on the fence, but I'm leaning towards pulling her, haven't yet. As she fits in a Navia team, who's one of my favorite characters, but it would be Navia, Bennett, and then, of course, you have our favorite chef, Zhang Ling. The second way to build her would be as a Geo DPS, which is similar in terms of your best weapon still being her signature weapon, and weapons alternatively being similar in terms of Flute of the Epitzel and Cinnabar Spindle. Difference being you do have the option for artifacts. Instead of the Scroll of the Hero of Cinder City, you go with the Husk of Opulent Dreams, which for that one is 2 pieces plus 30 defense percentage. And then the 4 pieces, the character equipped with the artifact set obtains the Curiosity effect in the following conditions. When on the field, they'll gain a stack after hitting an opponent with a Geo attack, triggering a maximum of every 0.3 seconds. When off the field, the character gains 1 stack every 3 seconds. Curiosity stacks up to 4 times, each providing 6% more defense and a 6% Geo damage bonus. When the 6 seconds pass without gaining a Curiosity stack, 1 stack is lost. So if you're looking to have her more as a DPS than the support and actually have her be on field, that Husk of Opulent Dreams is going to be the way to go with her. And again, for main stats, Sands, you're going to be looking at defense percentage. Goblet here, instead of that defense, you're going to look at Geo damage bonus. Circlet would then become crit damage or crit rate. And then you would prioritize crit damage and crit rate as substats, and then defense percentage and energy recharge as opposed to the other way around. So that's going to be, in a nutshell, what we're looking at there. Now, Steve, while I'm on the fence and still kind of thinking about maybe pulling for her, probably pulling for you, I believe, did pull for her. So what's been your initial experience with her? How did the pulls go?
Pulls went fine. I was on my guaranteed in Genshin, so I've been sitting on my guaranteed for a while now. I was planning on waiting till Maravika, the Pyro Archon. Was really planning on holding out, but I decided that I really did want Xilonen?
Yeah, Xilonen.
Xilonen. I really did want her, even though I can't pronounce her name, apparently. That, yeah, I would pull for her. I have a little bit of time to refill my my Primo war chest, so I was like, okay, this will be fine. This will work out. So pulled for her. She came home in about, I believe, 72, 73 pulls. She was just before pity.
Softish pity?
Softish pity, somewhere in that range. So, that's good. That's also obviously good. It gives me a little bit of a break when I need to do my savings for the Pyro Archon. As far as how she plays, she's great. The team I'm currently running her in is I apologize, I am blanking for the Geo Umbrella Girl.
Navia.
Navia, thank you. It's been a long day. I do apologize, folks. Navia,
Put some
Furina,
respect on that name, okay?
Navia, Furina, and Yai Miko, and then Xilonen. Those 4 characters, it's actually pretty fun. I would say I don't feel the need for any energy recharge on her, just because you generate so many Geo particles, having 2 Geo on the team, that she works. If you were having her on a non-Geo team, I think that would be a bigger issue. Want to run some energy recharge on her. I would also say that I ended up stealing the Cinnabar Spindle off of Albedo to put on her because there just weren't any other defense scaling weapons that I had for her. So my Albedo is now currently Coming of the Dawn, Bringer of the Dawn, I believe is the 3-star weapon that you give them.
Oh, well, it's how often are we really using Albedo? But for Cinnabar Spindle, that's I think the second or third best option as a free-to-play choice. So good selection there.
As far as like artifacts and so forth, I haven't had the heart.
Have you even had time to farm anything for her yet?
No, I'm still trying to get the materials I need in order to get her leveled up, and I don't have the heart to go back and farm a whole new set. So I think I'm using the defense set, and okay. I am using the energy recharge set from Inazuma. Those 2. Just throwing that on her and kind of going like, this will do for now. Like, I'll worry about it later when I have more time, and I can try and go for. I don't know if I even have the heart to go for an entirely new artifact set, but considering the bonuses that it gives, I'll probably take a swing at it.
I guess for me, why I'm still on the fence on her is because if I do pull for her, first of all, I'm on my 50-50, so it's not remotely guaranteed. I do have enough to hit hard pity and attempt the 50-50, so that's essentially what my pull war chest is right now. But if I do pull for her, I was interested in Chaska, I'm interested in Mavica, and so if I do pull for her here, first of all, I may miss, but if I hit, then I'm on a 50-50, and I feel I will either have to sacrifice pulling for Chaska or pulling for Mavica, and I think I will most likely, they don't make weak Archons, I'll be pulling for Mavica.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I'm at, but I'll keep everybody posted what I decide to do, and if I do end up doing the pulls, maybe I'll throw those up here on the channel so you all can witness my triumphs or my massive failures with me and help me cope or celebrate.
Sounds like a plan.
But what else do we have, Steve, this week?
So we only have one Genshin Impact event this week. Honkai Star Rail is still eventless at the moment, or at least as of time of recording. Didn't see anything on the docket. So the event this week, or for Genshin, is Aphid Treasure Trace. Basically, you will be finding, pursuing, and then attacking giant aphids, which are bugs, that have been corroded by the abyss. You use insect nests to break their defenses and drain abyssal energy from them within a time limit, and then capture them. It gives you the standard suite of Genshin rewards, primos, weapon ascension materials, so on and so forth. It is a time-gated event. By the time this goes live, everything should be available, so you should be able to just log in and play. But at least as of time of recording, not the full set of events has not been fully unlocked. So we are not able to complete it as of time of recording, but it should be available at the time this goes live. But other than that, it's fine. It's definitely something a little bit different. So worth a shot especially if you need those primos. Having said all that, let's move on, Dave, to the outside Honkai or outside Hoyoverse news.
Yeah. Well, I do need primos, so I will probably be hitting that up. Like I said, my war chest is not where I want it to be for this patch and these next rounds of characters. But moving outside of the Hoyoverse realm, we do have a few things to talk about here. Now, and very quickly, we talked last week about Games sponsoring the Breeder Cup. I had mentioned that as part of the Triple Crown in U.S. horse racing. Breeders' Cup, that is not correct. I was confusing the Breeders' Cup with the Belmont Stakes. So I do want to correct myself on that. The Breeders' Cup is a big horse racing arc in the U.S., but it is not part of the Triple Crown. So small correction on myself from last week. I was going back and listening, and I heard myself. I was like, it's not the Breeders' Cup. It's Kentucky Derby, the Preakness, and the Belmont Stakes, not the Breeders' Cup. So my bad to those horse racing enthusiasts that maybe heard that and thought, he's wrong on this. Apologies. Now, as far as news this week, right? So things we really care about, Gacha games, not horse racing. Couple big announcements. So we have, first and foremost, Haze Reverb is a Gacha game that the pre-registration rewards were announced, and this is coming out global here in the near future. And for this one, I remember hearing a blurb about this a while back, and it caught my attention because the combat in this game is similar to Brave 9, formerly known as Brown Dust. And I do enjoy playing that game, and while Brave 9 is currently in its end of service set to shut down at the end of this calendar year, its combat was something that was unique and I always enjoyed playing. So if you like that style of combat and the strategy aspect of it, you may want to check out Haze Reverb. The aesthetic of it, though, is not, magic and mythical stuff like Brave 9 was. It's mech girls. So if you like the mecha aesthetic, and you like your selection of waifus, this may be right up your alley. So I'll probably be giving it a try when it drops. Again, I do like mecha, like Gundam Wing type stuff, but again, the combat reminds me of Brave 9, which is a strategy RPG stuff, which is something I tend to enjoy. In other pre-registration news, we mentioned it last week, Girls Frontline 2 Exilium, they reached the 1 million pre-registration milestone, and so we're going to, unlock another tier of rewards for when that show, or it's not the show, when that game does eventually show up in our app store, right, and become playable. I've heard rumors and speculation about when the game is going to be coming out, and I've heard something as early as November 4th, but then I heard some other folks saying like December 4th. So something to keep an eye on. Again, this is going to be Waifu XCOM. So if you enjoy the XCOM series of games that was on console and PC a few years back and its sequel, and you enjoy waifus, probably going to really enjoy this game. I know I will. So I'll be giving that a go. Whether it be November 4th or December 4th, I am ready. In other news, games that are out currently, we have Snowbreak. They just had a patch this past week, and they gave out the 5-star character as a free reward, complete with their equivalent of an artifact set, which is there's only 3 pieces of artifacts over there, 3 slots for artifacts over there. But they did give out the free 5-star unit, Marion Riptide. So be sure to log in if you play that game anytime between now and November 7th to get that one. And then just before we started recording here, I did see a post, Nike, Goddess of Victory. They announced that their 2nd year anniversary is going to start November 4th. So we do have our 2nd anniversary for them coming out, and if it's anything like their first one, it'll be complete with an event with its own map to explore and search for treasures on. The speculation right now, if you play Nike and are familiar with the lore, the speculation is the new character is going to be the Pilgrim Cinderella. So we got a lot of players that are very excited for her and what that means in terms of the story and the plot and the story. And I do literally mean the plot and the story, not air quotes plot. So we're excited to see if that rumor is true for Nike. I know I'm excited for that. Currently been saving. I skipped the Evangelion collaboration that they did because I am interested to see what all the anniversary that's right around the corner is going to bring us. And then speaking of anniversaries, we do have Path to Nowhere. They are having their 2nd anniversary come up here in the near future. We don't have an exact date announced as of recording. What's been announced as of right now is they are going to do a live stream for the anniversary announcement on October 13th, which is after this recording, but before we post this. So, speaking as if it's Monday afternoon and you're listening to this while you do some chores or finish up your office work at home, go check that out for Path Nowhere. They will have their live stream over the weekend and announcements for dates and features, things they're going to be releasing there. But that's going to do it for us this week. So I know we have a lot of announcements to get through there, and a lot of things happening in the Gacha world that we're very excited about. We do want to thank you guys for joining us this week. Let us know what maybe are some of the pitfalls that you look to avoid, or maybe some mistakes that you have made, right? Because none of us are perfect except for Steve. Maybe some mistakes that you made when starting a Gacha game, so that, we can share and pass along and maybe learn something ourselves to try and avoid and think about. If you did enjoy the episode, though, and you'd like to support the show, be sure to like, follow, and subscribe to the channel. You can email us at brohoyopod@gmail.com with questions or suggestions for the show. We also have a link to our Discord in the description, so you can be sure to join us over there for news, game nights, and content notifications. Be sure to join us next week when we give our full review of the Genshin Impact 5.1 patch that's come out. Now that we've had time to play it and digest it and are a few weeks in, we'll give you our thoughts and let you know what we think about everything and how it's been done. But until then, keep gaming.
We made a choice, go fight against your fate. Pain will come with the flame. Pain will wake up the despondent crowd. Storm and world somehow. Unseen